Everybody, how are you doing? Hope everyone's well. We'll just leave it a few minutes just for everyone to join. Hi everybody, you can just see you joining now, just leaving it a few minutes for the others. Welcome in. Afternoon everybody, hope you're well. Great, I think we'll probably get started. Just the last few people joining now, but welcome everybody, thanks very much for joining. Quick introduction to myself and the company and the session, and then we'll get into it. We've got about a 30-minute session today. Plenty of time for Q&A at the end. There's a Q&A box if you want to use that. I'll try and keep an eye on the session, but definitely I'll visit them in the end as well, so we can get those cleared up for you. Firstly, a bit about me. My name is Rob Simpson. I'm a technical marketer by background, but I now build marketing technology. So I've spent about 16 years in marketing, 8 of those in-house, 8 of those in a marketing agency, where I did lead generation for about 300 clients, all B2B, finding data and executing campaigns for those people. It was on that journey that I found about Merit, and I've joined them about a year and a half ago, and I now run innovation for them. So it's my job to build tech that produces high quality data for them. And if you haven't heard about Merit before, we're data specialists, effectively. I won't spend too long on this at the moment, but we produce all sorts of data for all sorts of clients, and we've been doing that for about 20 years. When I talk about data and what we do, here's a really brief overlay, right? So we do product data, which is the sort of data that powers platforms. That's shipping, insurance, construction, all those kind of things. We do marketing data, which is kind of the focus of today's chat. And then we've got a large tech team that handles tech and AI builds, sort of custom consultancy work, that kind of stuff as well. And when I talk about marketing data, this is effectively what I mean. It's a bit deeper than this, but we build company lists based on a criteria for people. We build the same, but for contacts. So we find contacts, their details, everything else about them that you might need for marketing. And we also do validation, which is you can give us a kind of messy list. We'll clear it up, find verified contact details and verified details for those people. A bit more to it than that, but those are the sort of 3 pillars of marketing data for us. But today, we're here to talk about email and the fact that it's kind of faltering as a channel, but it's not lost, right? How can we fix that? What can we do about it? And this is what I mean, right? This is a stat that I found that kind of hammered it home. Reply rate's been dropping for a while, and this kind of shows in numbers. In those 12 months, dropped by 23%. That's 11 million emails sent, cold emails this is, right? So outreach emails. And you've probably felt it a little bit too. So I did some digging into how and why this might be. And I've got sort of 3 pillars as to why this may be happening. And so firstly, we've got prevalence of AI generated content. So this means more stuff is able to be created faster, and it's usually of less quality than something written by a well thought out marketing campaign. We've also got automation. That's nothing new, but it's getting easier and easier. So we get a kind of deluge of more AI content faster. We've also had some big changes in spam filtering. The famous one was Google's update a couple of years ago, but we've also had some really big leaps in company spam filtering. So if you get past your ESP, you still can get caught very easily by each individual company's spam filtering. And then we've got prevalence of poor data. So this is a kind of easy one as well. Scraping has become a little bit easier, and that means that there has been a kind of flourishing of small companies producing data for people. And often it's reasonably poor quality, but at least it's easy to access and it's cheap. So you're kind of getting a bit of a flooding of the email market. But is it worth saving, right? It's the favorite channel of B2B marketers. That's both in People who do the marketing, we like it because we own the data. It's not a platform that we're paying for that we could lose at any one time. And recipients like it because it's asynchronous. They can reply when they like, they can ignore it if they like. They much prefer it to things like phone, SMS, and anything else if you look at surveys. So we want to try and make it work. And if we want to do that, what can we do, right? We maybe have a look at email first principles. Back to the first principles, what are we trying to do? We need to send a relevant message, and that means it's relevant for the company and for the person, to the right person, someone who has the ability to take action on that and might be interested. And then it actually reaches them. And this is two things, right? It's deliverability. Does it actually hit their inbox? But then do they open it? That's your open rate subject line. And do they actually read it and take action based on it? You could, if you wanted to, add right time in here as well. Timing is very difficult for most people. You can accept that, about 5% of any audience is in buying mode at any one time, but there are very few external factors of this or indicators. So we kind of have to leave that one out unless you're one of those very lucky industries where you can see externally. So what can we do about this, right? You could send 37% more emails to get the same number of replies, right? But you probably shouldn't. I'm sure you know why, but we're going to quickly look at why you shouldn't and the impacts of sending more volume, right? So if we send a higher volume, say we've got a target audience of maybe 5,000 companies in the world that could be interesting to us, we're going to burn through that much faster. And that means you're then encouraged to think, okay, I still need to send emails, but I've run out of audience. So it encourages you to loosen your target audience, maybe invite some lower relevance, go for your second tier audience, and now you're sending more emails to less relevant people, which means that invites unsubscribes at best, but also spam reports as well. Generally speaking, you only need about 3 in 1,000 reports of spam to start having an impact on your domain's reputation for ESPs. So you want to avoid that at absolute all costs. And if you're sending more data, sending more emails to this data, you have to buy more data, and it's going to cost you more, 37% more on an average month, right? So we want to try and avoid that. And so what do high-performing campaigns look like? Right? This is based on my own experience of running an agency that did this for about 8 years, and also research around the last couple of years as well. So in general, they're small segments, so less than 200 people. They might be sent to 8 or more contacts per company. Doesn't have to be in that same segment, but multiple contacts at the same company, and they're highly personalized. You can kind of guess this one. It's not just name and company name. It's using other stuff that's kind of more interesting. If you're not using name, at least at the moment, that's kind of like table stakes, but you have to do a bit more to stand out because everyone has access to name and company name. All right, but from this, you can kind of tell that these are small campaigns, and it allows you to sort of do tests for incremental gains. You can test subject lines, content, messaging, all that kind of stuff. So small segments and highly personalized. And now we're going to go through an example of how this can actually work. So completely hypothetical, say we're a B2B, we're running a B2B fintech conference in London, and we want to attract some senior marketers. How could we produce a high-performing campaign for those guys? Firstly, we need to start with the target companies. So size and location, fine. We're going to do that pretty much anyway. Most people use size of company as a proxy for revenue and kind of type of business. Pretty accurate most times. Same with location, you know where they're based. If you're in London, you need a company, or at least the contacts that are based in London. Then we move on to things like industry. And this is where things start to get tricky in some cases. So not all industries are granular enough to rely on. And finance is one of those. It's really wide, right? That can include fintech, which is who you want, but also banking, insurance, all sorts of other stuff as well. Then this is a B2B conference, right? So we don't actually want to message the B2C people. It's irrelevant for them. We'll waste our time, and we'll also produce possible unsubscribes and all those negative effects we talked about on the previous slides. So how do we do that? We'll talk about that in a second. And then fintech itself. Once we've got it nailed down to fintech, there are actually tons of subcategories in that. And if you want to demonstrate knowledge in that industry, you might want to address each of these differently. It also unlocks quite a few options in terms of content, creative angles. So you might want to try and get that in the upfront. You may also think that it's not relevant for regulation tech people, so you might want to remove those straight away. Once you've got your companies, you now need some contacts. And you could just find you could say, I will accept any of these contacts, and that's fine. You can build a list of those, but I would recommend trying to tier these, so prioritize them. Who's the decision maker, who's an influencer, and who's a kind of wider influencer that you might need to know about. And you can talk to them differently. Again, it opens up a ton of options for creative freedom or creative angles for these. Also, it goes without saying, you might want to try and find as many of their email addresses as possible. If you're scraping from LinkedIn or buying lists of people, you still don't guarantee that you have their email address. You need to find as many as possible to give you your widest target audience. I also recommend trying to get, even if you're not planning to use it at first, other contact methods. So if you can't find their email address, you might be able to use their LinkedIn profile for something else, phone or physical address. No other way to say it, but like, how can we add some spice to this, right? Most people can do most of these things. But what can we do to show that we're a bit better than the average person? We've done some more research or kind of give ourselves more creative options than the average person. Firstly, we've got general opportunities. And these can be good. Things like recent news. Have they just had investment in the company? Are they hiring or firing quite quickly? Have they hired someone in a specific role that's particularly interesting to you? Are they new to the role themselves or company? That's kind of interesting because it means they are there to probably make some changes, maybe open to doing things differently. So it's a good time to sell. And they are good, but everybody has access to these. So sometimes when you get a new person in the role, that triggers a kind of large amount of comms to those people and you kind of get lost in the wash. It's kind of better if you can find something that's proprietary or something unusual. Have they been to your events before? Maybe a previous company, maybe someone they know has been to one of your events. Have they heard from you? Are they in your CRM? Are any of their competitors or maybe their customers in attendance or people like their customers in attendance? If you can find any of this information, it gives you tons more options. And that means you can do something like this. So rather than the full list, which might be thousands and thousands of people, you could send one sort of templated or lightly customized email to all of those. But you have to be fairly general because you just don't know enough about the granularity of each contact and company. But doing it in the way that we've just talked through gives you a kind of stack of possible segments, down to that 200 per segment level. And here we've got an example. Senior marketing management team, budget responsibility, they're new in the role, they've never heard from you and your events before. They work for a B2B fintech company who handles payments, so their payment platform. And the company's increased by size at least 10% in the last 12 months. And that gives us quite a few options, right? And we can write a template to these people and it will feel incredibly relevant and personal. And it gives us kind of opportunity to talk to them and about them. We can do the work for them in showing value. We don't have to make them look for it and say, look, we're running an event for fintech people, come and find out if it's relevant for you. We can say, as a decision maker, you're constantly weighing up where to spend your budget for the largest impact. We can say that we've got a specific track for people in their role, and we can mention the talks and the speakers that are relevant to them. We can call out the company's recent growth and say, look, we know you've got quite a few members in your team that you may want to bring along. More junior members, we've got some sessions for them as well. And we've also got sessions about the next stage of growth for companies like yours. Because it's a London-based event, senior marketers, they want to be back to and from the office. So we can say, look, it's close to the office, so you don't have to spend the whole day there if you don't want to. We could even pull their travel time from their office and say, it's 25 minutes from your office on the Jubilee line, something like that. Now this ticks two of those boxes, relevant message and the right person. But it also ticks the reaches them box as well, because deliverability, as far as email service providers are concerned, they really don't like high scale, high volume templated emails. It's seen as a negative marker. If you're sending the same template or very lightly customized to lots and lots of people, which a lot of us end up doing, it's seen as a negative spam marker. But in this case, you can pretty much send, even if it's a templated email, it still looks like it's completely custom written for small groups of people, and much less likely to get pinged for that and by the people receiving it, unsubscribes and spam reports. So that's kind of going to take you to above average. But how about best in class? What can we do for that? Then we'll walk through another example for this one of what we could do if we had a group that we absolutely have to get in contact with. I'm not suggesting we do this for everybody, but maybe you've got super high value people, maybe the sponsor targets, those people are going to spend a bit more money. We want to impress them. So what can we do here? Say this person's just become the marketing director, right? Perhaps we could send them a package with a handwritten address, and that contains a book which was recommended by their peers, or maybe by you or someone in your team. And that could have a post-it note with a handwritten note attached to it that says something like this. Congratulations, Rob. I think you'll love this book. No sign off, no kind of source or anything, nice and cryptic at this point. Okay, cool. They open the book, and what do they see, right? A small card might fall out, and it's got a QR code on it. And when they scan that, they reach a page that's completely personalized to them. Or if you want to be really smart about it, you could say, go and Google your own name if you want to know who sent you this book. And you could buy the Google AdWord of their name and say, look, it was us. And if you want to know why, click on the ad and we'll show you. And again, that ad specifically for them leads to a page that's personalized just for them. And because we have done all this research, we have the opportunity to personalize something really nicely for them. Glad you got the book, Rob. Congrats again on the role. Here's why I sent it to you. And this page is filled with copy that's all for them. So they're new in the role. We know you're there to make some changes, and we want to help you do that. We saw from the site that you work with X and Y, and we've got an event filled with people like that. So if you need to generate more business with them, this might be a good place to look. We know you've got international marketing teams as well, which is publicly available data. We have events in those territories too, and it might be worth you looking at those also. And then we can fill the page with examples related to them. If they're a payments platform, we can use sort of testimonials from their peers or examples from their peers, show the speeches and sessions track related to that as well. Maybe we want to have some interesting CTAs on there as well. So rather than just a form at the bottom, we might have a live call book sort of widget that they can do. And if they don't, maybe we have a LinkedIn connection that follows up from you shortly after. And we know they've been on the page and when they've been on the page much more accurately than click tracking, because that page is only for them. So we can say, okay, they're definitely on the page right now. You could even set something up that gives you a Slack or Teams notification when they do, which is something we've done in the past. We don't want to jump on immediately because it's kind of creepy, but you can at least know they're on there so that you know when to follow up. If you haven't heard from them in an hour after that, maybe it's time to follow up. If you want to go kind of extra personalized, you could do a Loom video for them and say, great, glad you got the book, Rob. Just wanted to know what you thought. See you've been on the page. Would love to have a chat. And if no response from all of these, we can follow up with a LinkedIn or an email next week or in the next couple of days. Now, let's have a quick look at a real example. So that sounds interesting in theory, right? But this is an example from my previous agency, which was for a recruitment firm. And they were targeting mid-sized UK-based e-commerce firms. And the angle was for them, we want to be your recruitment partner, but our speciality is outsource recruitment in other countries from the UK. And the idea they were trying to leverage was things like UK workers are expensive, in high demand, they're pretty fickle and they can swap jobs quite easily. We can help you fill those gaps quickly, and we're very good at it, and we can find skilled workers for you. So this is a rough example. It's kind of redacted and templated, but this is an example of a personalized page, as I was just talking about, right? So this is all templated messaging. And then we had a block here. Measure Grow is the name of my old agency. So this was having a look at our company. And we'd analyzed like 100,000 contacts at 3,000 companies and produced this kind of average report on these. It's all public data, but it's put together in a way that you wouldn't normally see. And we gave people these ratings and kind of things that were kind of interesting. And then the real hook was down here. So we say, you've got some at-risk employees. And as a owner of that business, you think, okay, what does that mean? And we'd put together a proprietary scale for these guys, which was like, how popular is the role? And we got that by looking at the job titles of these people and how popular they were, how many listings there were. And that was a proxy for how likely they might be to be poached or see one of these job postings and try and leave, versus how long they've been in their average, or how long they've been in this role versus their average tenure. So they normally stay in a job for 2 years. They've been here for 4 years. So perhaps they might be starting to get itchy feet and thinking about moving. And then combine that with when they were last promoted. That indicates raise, basically. Are they thinking they probably need some more money as well? And we used that to create a risk factor for these people. And this was all dynamic for every person that visited this site. They then had some, if they revealed this, they could see a personalized write-up for the company, which was explaining what they did and how they could help this company. And then they had a call book, all redacted here for you guys, that's had picture and names in there, but a Calendly booking process, which is kind of what we talked about in the last thing. So really nice personalization, really nice reply rate off this one. Quite involved to set up, but a really nice performing campaign. And why do we do this, right? It's because it's impossible to ignore, or nearly impossible to ignore. The average performance of these kind of campaigns, if you think about the average reply rate right now, it's about 5%. And these average about 24%. And if we really nailed it, it might be 60% in some really good cases where we had a really nice targeted niche. And it's automatable, takes a bit of setting up, as you can imagine from that previous thing. There was lots of data work to actually produce that. But once it was done, we could kind of set and forget that for a couple of months and it would just run and produce leads for us on a day-to-day. The thing I really like about these kind of campaigns, or any campaign where you put a bit more effort, is that they are brand building. And that means if there's no sales opportunity, which often there is, even if it's the right person, 95% of people are not in buying mode, as we talked about earlier. Even if there isn't, these are highly memorable. They create goodwill with people. And that means for later interaction, we can either mention it to say, hey, we were the guys that sent you the book, to remind them about that. Or they may keep whatever you've sent them so that when it is buying time, you're first on the list. It's also a great way to sort of showcase what you do. I think people forget that in outreach often because we use email the same way pretty much for every campaign. But people receiving it's the first time they've heard of us. So the saying that the way you do anything is the way you do everything, that's a way to work on this. If you put that much effort into your outreach and your kind of way of getting their attention, that probably translates into how you offer your service or your product as well. Now, some things to remember about these. From experience, there's a fine line between creative and creepy. And so when you come up with an idea, maybe let it sit for a couple of days, mock it up, revisit it, test it in low scale, just to make sure you're walking the right side of that line. No tech for tech's sake. So just because you've seen a cool piece of technology, don't try and shoehorn it into your campaign unless it's relevant. Small segments regularly, that's kind of again on the have we hit the mark with the creative angle, the copy, everything else. And coming from someone whose job it is to automate a lot of things, not everything should be automated. There are some things that are just better done by humans, and sometimes that's, is this company the right fit for us? Everything may be the same. They may be the same size, same sector, same B2B, B2C categorization, but for whatever reason, they're not right for you. Maybe you're already working with someone like them and they wouldn't like it if you joined with that person also, or you just don't like to work with that kind of brand. So it's worth having a look through. Things like AI generated copy as well can be great, but definitely requires a bit of a look through also. So high reply rates, good performance, kind of brand building. Why doesn't everyone do this kind of stuff, right? And probably looking at these kind of examples, you're thinking, okay, there's a lot of work in there. And it's true, getting the right kind of data is difficult. And I think that's the main blocker for most people. And in those examples we've just talked through, we've got things like B2B, B2C. There's no obvious product that can do that for you or tick box that lets you filter by that easily. Things like granular industry categorization. That's kind of two light examples, but there'll be tons of those things that make it quite difficult to turn what is public data into something that feels proprietary. So people tend to sort of have the idea and think that'd be cool, but feel unable to execute it. And these are the normal options, right? And I come from a marketing background, so I've tried all of these at length. And you can see why, right? So you could do it yourself. You need very specific skills to be able to do this kind of stuff. They're expensive, you don't need them all the time. And it's complex to execute. And you might be building a Ferrari that you're only going to drive once or something. So in my opinion, better to outsource. List builders, these are my least favorite. No offense to any list builders, but you can only buy what they have here. So they've pre-gathered a list. You can buy some or all of it, but you have no real idea of where that came from. And they'll put seed data in there so that they know if you're using it beyond when they said you could or all that stuff. They also can't really get you custom data, which is quite pivotal for these kind of campaigns. Freelancers, kind of the opposite, right? They are going to help you do flexible things, but in terms of long-term scalability, it's really difficult to maintain one person and keep them there. They're reasonably fickle with, if they get a better offer, suddenly they're unavailable, they're working on a larger contract, and sometimes they do need holidays as well. And data platforms, I'll talk a bit more about these. These are the very popular option, and they're good, but they have some flaws. And when I say data platforms, this is what I mean. So Cognism, ZoomInfo, Apollo, all this kind of stuff. And I've used all of these a lot. And here's the kind of flaws I found when I was doing outreach for these, just to kind of illuminate this and see if it resonates with some of you guys. I'm sure there are some users of these platforms in here. And their key trait is large databases. This is what they sell their product based on. We've got 280 million, we've got hundreds of millions, we've got 300 million contacts in our database. And that sounds really impressive until you realize that LinkedIn itself, just LinkedIn, has 1 billion users, all right? So what does that mean? It means that 60% or 66% of the people are missed, and that could contain some really useful people for your audience. It also means that everybody who uses those platforms, and they're popular, is marketing to those 33% of people, which means they're getting a lot of comms from people. And if they're not on LinkedIn, which is how these platforms find people, they're not in these platforms. That's particularly interesting if you're marketing to the Middle East, Asia, and kind of areas where LinkedIn's just not so popular. And if you want custom data here, it's quite difficult to merge that in. So you can't sort of say, oh, could you tweak that and make it like this? You have to export that data and do that work yourself. And another reason I'm not so keen on these is databases are, although they're quick to receive, you can just query them and it's great, but they're really hard to maintain. And that's because people change jobs. Pesky people change jobs about every 3 years. So that's about a third of your population per year on average. And that means these data platforms, they can't keep up, right? So they scrape the most popular contacts quite regularly, but not everybody. And that was nicely illustrated. There's an Apollo filter that they recently took away, actually. So Apollo had this up until a couple of months ago. You could filter by who has been updated in the last 12 months. And the last time I checked, it was 18% of their whole database, which is pretty shocking, which means if you're trying to have confidence in the data and send this kind of interesting campaign, how do you know that this data is still right, or they're not in a different job, they haven't moved companies, the email might bounce, because it was verified when they last checked it, but they haven't checked it in more than 12 months. So I didn't like that kind of stuff either. One other thing about these guys is it's a shared pool of data. It's not yours, you don't really own it, and people can unsubscribe from it. So if someone gets annoyed with the comms coming from clients of these companies, they can go to a page and just say, remove me from this. So you're kind of at the behest of the lowest quality marketer of that tool. So I've bashed these guys a little bit here, but it's because I know I've used these platforms, and some of you guys might have had these same kind of problems. And that's what attracted me to Merit. That's why I joined, right? So what do we do differently? We're a provider of data, much in the same way. We produce company lists, contact lists, and we can verify data also. But how do we do that differently? Firstly, our database is zero. We don't have a database of contacts, and that's on purpose. And that means that every time we do a data collection job, it's done live, and it's done specifically for you. We don't share data between clients, and it means it's yours, you own it. And that gives you maximum confidence when segmenting and sending that this has been collected within days of your brief, or within days of when you're going to send the comp. So maximum chance of it being live and up to date. We also collect stuff from multiple sources. And that means that things are, if they're not on LinkedIn, if you're working in a tricky industry, it's not a problem for us. We can get you anybody on LinkedIn. We can get you anybody not on LinkedIn via company website, lists and aggregators, and that gives you maximum coverage of your target audience. So you can run out of data much slower. How we do this is a finely tuned mix of automation, AI, and human hands. So we have really sophisticated process to gather this information, clean it up, and can customize it in the way you like. But also we have really thorough human checks. We've got a large team of people who are specialists in this, who've been doing this for years, to give you maximum completeness. So if you ask for this, this, and this, you have the highest chance of getting that. And it's going to be accurate also. We have very high thresholds for accuracy. And because we're people, you can speak to us also. That means you don't have to jump into Zoom and think, okay, what are the fields that I can try and produce this list from that are on top of size, anything else? Is there anything else I can think of? And we can help you build the brief. You don't actually have to use the tech. You can just tell us and we'll build the brief for you, double check with you. And we can remember that as we work with you on a recurring basis. You can just say, I need another 1,000 of that same brief rather than having to run it again. And staying on briefs, complex data briefs are much simpler in this way, right? So you can achieve that tiered job title thing. So say you want three contacts per company per tier of job title. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, we talked about in that priority order, and a maximum of 5 total per company and 10,000 per contacts per job. That's kind of difficult to do with a Zoom or an Apollo. You have to do lots of exporting, deduping, VLOOKUPs, counts, run again and again and again. That's built into the way we operate. And that's because it's been built by marketers, right? We are building this tech in the way we would want to use it. And our job is to make your life a little bit easier. And we can get you data other people can't. And so that's because we are not a product with a database. You can say, actually, I want this attached to the data. I need to know if they've won this award or not. I need to know if they mentioned this on their website or not. Some obvious examples are things like physical address for a direct mail, which is really difficult to get. If you've ever tried to do this, I'm sure you have. You generally have to pay an intern to do this. There's no one that's going to sell you this data in any way that's accurate. And we, for example, if IBM has 10 offices in the UK or more, how do you find the right version of that? We have a process that handles that kind of thing. And the same for clean company name, such a simple one. I can't believe more people don't offer this. So Merit's full name is Merit Tech and Data Limited. And that's what we have on LinkedIn. So that's what gets scraped by things like ZoomInfo. And in an email, you don't want to say, hi, Rob, I see you work at Merit Tech and Data Limited, because it gives the game away immediately. You want to say, hi, Rob, I see you work at Merit. So we can offer you that as a field to allow your marketers to use that nice and easy. Got to speak about pricing. Although this is not my bag, I'm in innovation. We do volume-based pricing, right? So you pay for what you use, but the outcome of that is you can get scale discounts, but also there's no wasted credits. I used to hate that with subscription-based stuff. You pay for 10,000 credits, sounds good. You work out cost per contact, but you actually maybe have a peak in one month and a trough in another, meaning you don't use all your credits, and that pushes your price per contact up in a way that you can't really predict or adjust for. And lastly, we're a data team. So as you've kind of picked up from what I've been talking about, this is a team of people, not a platform. That means you can give us flexible requests, we can give you suggestions, and we can work with you to give you better data than kind of working on your own, trying to get hold of an account manager for Zoom or anyone else. But the outcome of this is that we're able to help you produce reliable, high quality data in a way that's simple to use. And that's because basically very few people get into marketing to work on spreadsheets, spend time compiling data. We do this bit for you so that you have a solid foundation of data that you can have confidence in and allow you to have more creative options and time to execute them so you can produce those higher performing campaigns that we were talking about. Okay, I think I've done enough talking for now. So thank you very much for listening up to now. I'd like to open the floor for some questions if we have any. Let me have a look in the platform. Anybody questions? There's Q&A 4. Okay. First one, David, recording of the webinar. Yes, absolutely. That'll be coming through in the next few hours, if not tomorrow morning, India time actually. So it'll be probably around in the next few hours. Louise, just a comment there on agreeing that marketers get obsessed with the response rate and forget the nudge or brand effect. Absolutely. I mean, this is often the first time anyone's ever heard of you from this company. So definitely have to put some effort in and make this work. Do we have any example of targeting people in specific companies in a way that uses various data sources, some internal, to nail them once they roll to other companies in the target area? Aha. So yes, we have a process on this one where we can follow contacts. Say this is part of our validation process. And people use this to sort of say, okay, we know people move. That would say in traditional terms, they're now not in our target audience, but they most likely have moved to a job that's in similar function, similar role, and often same type of company, meaning they're still a target person and company. In validation, we say, can you check this list of 10,000 contacts and sort of fill in any blanks, but also tell me if people have moved, if they're no longer in that role, and we can produce a list of, yes, this is all correct, and here's their updated data, or we can say, these people have moved, and then if you want us to, we can also say, and here are their new contact details. So Rob's now moved to Merit, and here's his Merit email address, physical address, phone number, here's his new job title, and any data that you want about the company. We also validate those email addresses with like a 5-layer thing, so you have plenty of confidence in that. And we have for some clients also a custom process where we assess that company based on their target audience and say, is this company actually still a target for us, yes or no? So that we can give that data back to them in a way they don't have to then scroll through the spreadsheet and kind of say, is this definitely the right kind of customer or not? We can give them an idea, yes or no, are they relevant? Another one from Louise here, intent data. I'm not the biggest fan of intent data. I know some people really like it, but I am less keen on intent data because I know a few people that work in companies that produce this data, and I know how they do it. If you are a very large network you have a very large network of people, sites or pages that you control, you can sometimes get a pretty good idea of what people are looking at. So I know very large event producers can say, in the CRM, we've got these people, we've sent them an email address, we know we know this person's browsing our site, and we can see what they're browsing on. That's first party data. So for that, it's pretty good, but only relevant if you have that kind of network of content and pages. I think the third party stuff is really tricky because the best you'll get is kind of, this company has looked at a page that's to do with this. Does that mean they're willing to buy that, or are they just looking on their lunch break at something? Who in the company was looking at? Particularly if you're targeting larger companies, it's really difficult to say, okay, I saw, was this team looking at it, someone else? Does that mean they were buying or whatever else? So I mean, I'm not super keen on intent data. I'm willing to have my mind changed for sure, as always, but up to now, I haven't seen any really good examples where someone's used that and it's kind of produced obvious improvement in results. Some of that stuff's kind of expensive as well, particularly the stuff that reveals people who've been on your website. Again, that's pretty shaky as to who actually was there. So yeah, good question on that one. I haven't seen any great examples, but yeah, a good question. How do we keep out of spam? Okay, so spam on this one, there's a few examples. I mean, it's a kind of art, not a science, but some guiding points on that. I like to use a few tools. One of them is called mailtester.com, so mail-tester.com. That's a tool where you can send the campaign you're going to send through to their service, and they'll assess it and say, from a wording perspective, does this contain like a high proportion of words that are considered as spam? And from a tech perspective, does this look like a proper email? Has it got DMARC set up properly? Is everything done in the correct way? It's not the be all end all, but a really nice free service, so worth looking at, mail-tester.com. There's another one called MX Toolbox, which is more for like blacklists, right? So to know if your domain has been impacted at all from any previous activity. And you can say, am I live on any blacklists? Often it'll be no, and it's just good to know that for confidence. Again, that's a free tool. I think that's mailboxtool.com probably, but if you search MX Toolbox, you'll find it. And last one on spam. This is a cool one. Another service, or there's a bunch of people that do this. The one I've used in the past is instantly.ai. And this is like they have inboxes in different, using different ISPs. So they've got, or ISPs, they've got Gmail, they've got Outlook, anything else you can think of, and multiples of them. And if you send them an email, you'll be able to send it to multiple of those contacts, and they'll open and screenshot where the email landed. And it will show you, did it go to main inbox? Did it go to spam or promotions? So promotions is not spam, but it means it's very much less likely to get read. So it can give you clues as to whether you're in spam or not. Suzanne, the great one, GDPR. How about GDPR? Absolutely. We take compliance super, super seriously. We've got a team dedicated to it over here. So we only collect data that is requested by our clients, and we store it in a GDPR compliant way. But in terms of how you can stay GDPR compliant also, it's about intent. And so do you have legitimate business reasons to get in touch with these people? And I'd say absolutely. I mean, because you're targeting by much more than just job title and company. You're saying, does this exact person have a reason to want this product or service? So absolutely, it's worth looking at. KPIs on accuracy. So I'm guessing this is about kind of accuracy of our data. And again, this is one that we do an awful lot of, right? So we have an internal metric that's very high of acceptability. So our accuracy is above 97% for all projects. If we ever hear from our clients that it's not this, we will produce replacements and things like that. But we have a ton of processes to make sure that we're always above that threshold, including internal QC teams. So we have manual QC on all the projects that we produce, and any feedback. We've got, is SEO relevant also? So SEO, absolutely it's relevant. I have spent quite a lot of time doing this also in some previous jobs. I think in terms of outreach, it can be a hand-in-hand approach. I think any one marketing channel cannot really stand on its own, because if someone searches about you and they find nothing, or they find kind of a review site with kind of spurious reviews on there, not great. I think it's really difficult to rank kind of for high value, if you're kind of starting up or trying to compete in large markets, which I often was. It's quite difficult to rank in time for a campaign. So what I used to do is try and say, if we absolutely have to sell to this audience, we'll do cold outreach heavily first, and then work on the SEO in the background. So we know that ranking takes 6-9 months to happen. It's anyone's guess what's going to happen now that Google are producing AI snippets at the top. Maybe SEO will have to change a lot. But this was a kind of, while we're building up SEO, we're going to go heavy on the outreach, and then maybe we can dial back on some of it because we don't want to be doing heavy outreach the whole time through. All right, I think that is all the questions in there. Any more? No? Okay, great stuff. So as we mentioned, yes, the recording will be coming through shortly. And really great to have you on the session. Thanks very much for joining and your great questions. If you'd like to hear more about what we do, Merit's data offering, either get in touch with me, here's my email address here, and I can put you in touch with the right person, or you're very welcome to visit our site and have a look through and fill in one of the forms, and someone will get in touch with you to talk about your project. All right, so thank you very much, and chat soon.